and welcome to the cemetery. This is my latest map. I've been doing it for about 3 years, I think, on and off. You wouldn't know it. But it's coming on. There's lots of gaps. There's some wild areas. There's different bits of boundaries on the map. There's memorials. There's bits like this. There's a mix of old and new. There's some very exposed open bits, though the gravestones are fairly big and offer cover. There's some slowdowns, nice. There's wooded areas. And if I find it over here, there's also tunnels, catacombs, which can be breached in various places. Here we have the ruins of an old chapel, and we've got a digger. Ah, digger. And we've got a rose garden. We've got a motorbike going past. We've got a lush backdrop. We've got another kind of wooded area. And these are all, or mostly all, features that are based on real parts of real London cemeteries. This is reminiscent of a bit of Nunhead Cemetery. This is in fact a war memorial from Nunhead Cemetery. So anyway, this is my cemetery map. That's not all of it. There's lots of other bits I've done. And we've got a crematorium with lots of detail from the real crematorium. Bits I could be bothered to copy. We have this is where we started, this little enclosure based on the Greek enclosure in West Norwood Cemetery. So how might you go about making such a map, in case you're foolhardy enough? Like I said, it's taken me about 3 years, but I've not been super efficient. But one thing I have done is take 2,661 reference photos in cemeteries, a variety of cemeteries, including some family snaps while I was there. And it's a mixture of just getting a feel for the place, some direct texture work to lift off features of graves. I might use that one actually, it's quite nice. And there are some where I've got a variety of views to help with modelling, and usually it's a combination of all things, so a sense of the place, some textures to use on the models, and then enough details to be able to reproduce the models. So these are relatively straightforward. I've got similar graves to these. Yeah, and so when I jump to the modeler, this is just something I was working on, which is a sort of functional a car park. So this is the really boring end of it. What else have I got here? Crypt B. So this is rather more exciting, and so you can see I've used photorealistic textures, literally taken from the photos, with some more generic materials. And it's not the best modelling in the world, and I had to create a collision hull, set of collision hulls for it. And this is, slow, painstaking work. If I look at the UVs, you can see. Well, actually, I've got a variety of them, but that's crypt wall. And let's just isolate that. So I've used and reused textures. Being a mod maker, I can't be too extravagant with all my materials. Here's a grave I've made, and that's going to be grave M Atlas. So It's generally more efficient to have texture atlases rather than individual textures, because that means you can reuse materials more. And when you merge meshes, which I will be doing a lot for optimizing, it's really helpful if you have one material rather than four. Now, it's 4 times the size of each single texture, so it's not like you're using up more space overall. You're just reducing the number of materials, so that means fewer draw calls, which means more optimized. So that is sort of like advanced advanced map making. There would be no modeling reason to combine the textures. It's a pain in a way, though actually if you're just creating 4 separate graves, you can reuse. You could just, like for most things, just drag the UVs across to another square and it will mostly be right. And this is probably terrible modelling, but where's it gone? The thing is, I'm now getting more liberal in the use of polygons to make stuff, because the inbuilt LOD maker in UE4 can get things down really small. So let's look at this grave. This is, and here are all my assets for symmetry, and there's more I've made that aren't in this category. But here's all the grave stuff, and here's the more modern stuff. So that is the one we just looked at. Now, because I used lots and lots of polygons, the lighting works fine, because there's lots of extra polygons to. Anyway, yeah, you know what I mean, or you don't. But LOD 0 is 768 triangles, but LOD 2 is almost fine, and it's 38 triangles. So you can really, really aggressively LOD these down, and that's only at screen size 0.15. So you're somewhere out there, and the difference is you can't really tell the difference. So I found that the LOD maker in UE4 has made my modelling better, because I'm not cutting corners in the modelling, but I'm still able to get very, very optimised meshes. And then when I will be merging the stuff, I'll probably merge the big stuff and then merge the small stuff. How you merge it, how far you merge it, it's just a trade-off of what you're likely to be drawing anyway. So if most views will take in most things, then nothing to be lost by merging them. And if they're all, I don't know quite how it works, but if you've done the LODs for all the individual pieces, it tends to LOD down very well when you merge the meshes. And you can do a further LOD down for the whole lot. So if you've got the distance view, you can really aggressively LOD these down, these merged meshes. So there's a lot of work to do, but also a lot of work that I can do to optimize this. I've not done much at all. I think this is one area that I did optimize. So all these graves, I didn't do it very efficiently at first, but this is a merged mesh with 23 materials. But so that's 23 draw calls, but actually 23 draw calls for all of that, not bad. That'll do. And let's look at the actual merged mesh that it made. And this is auto LOD, so at distance view it's got 4,000 triangles. Well, that's nothing for the whole area. And as you get closer in, that goes up to 85,000 triangles. So when you're in the middle of it, yeah, it's drawing 85,000 triangles, but that's not a huge number. Foliage is probably the biggest problem. I want a lot of foliage, and I've got a lot of foliage, and I'd like rather more of it. And it doesn't look as nice as I'd like. The grass I'd like to be thicker, but I've really, up close it's okay, but I've really dialed down the thickness of the grass relative to a map like Macedonia, because I'm aware I'm really hammering it on the foliage. And you can LOD down all the trees and things, but they only go so far, and all the transparencies that it's doing are not efficiently drawn. And yeah, so I thought I'd show you that. I've got a few other things I have. If I play it, it takes a little while to get there. This thing was a marketplace asset. I do use marketplace assets, but they're fairly obvious. Oh, my mouse is inverted. That's really disconcerting. I inverted it because this thing, this little digger, I managed to make it enterable, though you can't see the player in it, and when you finish driving it the player goes back to where they were. These are things I could fix if I had the time. I'm not entirely sure I want a drivable vehicle, but it is, and that's one way to explore. You could use it tactically. I dare say the scoop is fairly bulletproof. Whoa! And this seems to be dealing with all sorts of physics, built-in sort of physics stuff, which is quite fun. An F to leave, and you're back where you were. I'm really struggling with the inverted mouse now. Yeah, so there are some map design principles I'd like to adhere to. One is that all cover should, oh god, I can't stand it. All the cover should remain cover for as far as you're seen. So what I'm trying to do is really get down the sight lines so I don't have to have foliage visible too far away. But there are still some viewing angles where you've got to cull quite far. So these bushes, oh hello, you're not right. Let me just fix that. Foliage. I'm now on 4.26. There we go, and I need to drag it down a bit. I'm now 4.26, so they've changed the layout of these things. I don't really like it still, but I'm sure I'll get used to it. These are my assets. Quite pleased with this one. This is a mix of meshes, 3D stuff, and there's some 2D work there. And that's good enough. It's good up close because of the normal mapping, which I use a crazy bump for. So I think I manually drew in a height map with high points in the middle and tapering off, and I might have merged that with the normal map from Crazy Bump. So it should, oh yeah, I did that to do the parallax occlusion, which gives it a slight 3D-ness. Hard to see, need to compare it side by side, but it makes it that little bit more believable as a 3D thing. Yeah, and you can see this is all my stuff. It's all photorealistic scan stuff, but where it's not, let's see if I can find one. I've used some marketplace stuff because I really need to fill in. So these are nice models, but you can tell they're different, these ones. And this is some, it's pixelated because I've dialed down the resolution because it's a modded map, but this is, it's hard to tell, but it is, it's got 3D stuff going on, and it's got varying roughness. So let's just take a look at this material. I haven't done anything fancy with parallax occlusion, but I've again sort of atlased all the textures into one material, and you see I've done the alpha defines the roughness, and it also defines the height, because the two are pretty much the same thing with the window. Let's turn off the alpha. So a little bit of trickery with the textures to save a lot of modelling. That's what you want, and it's got to all kind of be plausible. Other things, collision hulls. It's very obvious, but you want to have very detailed collision hulls where the player can go, and not bother so much about where the player can't go. So up top here, it's a fairly crude, you can't really see the collision. I've just done a very crude bit of collision, but down here I'm modelling every corner, because you know, if you stick your gun there you can see where the gun clunks. It's very immersion breaking if you've got very bad models. I was going to say lots of stuff, the terrain and all that, so let me go to a new area and show you how I do that. So I'm trying to have a diverse environment. These are my landscape layers. They're a bit boring. I'm trying to use them in a way that makes physical sense, so that, and some people make auto materials that do this, but I'm manually sort of painting up the sides of hills with this semi-barren texture, and it doesn't look great, but I'm doing it consistently, all these things, so that the areas are consistent. If I'm putting down, and the key thing to getting a good immersive map is to blend. You blend the landscape, you blend the foliage, and you blend the things in it. So for example, if I just put down, let's get to the right bit, if I just stick down a grave, I can sink it into the ground a bit. That's not selling it. That's not selling it at all. So things I might do, get a very small brush, just touch up some of the corners so you see the ground flowing around it, and you know, what do things do in real life? Well, the soil sort of butts up to things. And then this is a little crude, but I select this dirt texture and I just go around, and with just that little change it's blended the object to the landscape. And to make things better, it still looks a bit odd. I've got a lot of foliage. Here's my grass ready to go, so I just want to break up the open areas with a bit of grass. I've got a different kind of grass that's rougher that I use. I'm trying to use different grasses in different areas so they're visually distinct. This one is good for just breaking up large surfaces. So the landscape grass is there, but it's not very visible. But if you stick this stuff in a slightly more sympathetic way than I've done, it just starts to feel like, you know, a real place. There are some little tricks. If I put in trees, there's things I tend to do with them. Let's get a cypress oak. Oh, did I turn that off? Yeah. So if I've got a tree there, again, not really selling it, but a little thing to do is, you know, trees have roots. The roots do that to the ground, and then either use that dirt or use this sort of forest floor texture based on an epic texture. I tweaked it in various ways, just graduate that off, and shift to foliage, just going to make sure that's in the ground. Naughty tree, and then maybe find something else just to, you know, help blend it in, to be honest, but create some interest. I'm going to get rid of that one, that's too far off. And maybe add a few different bits of foliage to blend it in with the area as a whole. It's a bit of a theme. Oh, missed that one. You know, in a slightly more wooded area, I might stick a bit of that in. Now with this, I have a landscape grass, so I'm just rambling, that's what I do, but as I think of it, I've created a landscape grass that is very foliage heavy, and I haven't used it here, so you can see it's thinking about it, and I'm going to delete those while they're here. And now the thing is with landscape grass, it could be very efficient for small areas as you're walking through them, but if you've got long sight lines, you don't want it to persist, because it's very hard to maintain good density at distance with landscape grass. So I've only used it in areas, there it is, where the sight lines are constrained. So if I carry on with this texture, this landscape layer, this is how I've made my wooded areas. And in those wooded areas there are places where you do get the long sight lines in, and the principle is you don't want somebody to rely on cover that disappears at distance. But what I do is I then do a little bit of cheating and just add some of these at the front of the area, so as you go away you still see that, and it creates the impression that there's still the woodland there, so it gives some cover, but it doesn't need you to have the landscape grass drawing at extreme range, which otherwise it doesn't, so it's gone. But the main thing is to just try and block sightlines, and I've gratuitously used bushes. I've only used one kind of bush, actually two models, but one kind of bush. I'm just going to get rid of that. What I might do is go and mix it up later, bring in some new bushes. There are very few good bushes or efficient bushes, but these I've used to break up the sightlines. I'm trying to put them naturally, so there's things like if you just dot them around in a grid, it looks very wrong. They tend to be clustered in real life, and the two side by side looks a bit odd. I've already done a bit of this, but one thing to do is to scale down to create a contrast of size, which makes it a bit more natural. Or to group three together, again very different sizes. I've not done it necessarily very well. This is intended to be a big area. I'm going to put a block wall in there because that's a bit of a wall of bushes. I don't want people to sneak through because that doesn't look like you should be able to sneak through that bunch of bushes. So I'm going to copy some I've done already because you've got to set a few properties for these to make them actually work the way you want to make them work. The default is weird. But here is one I've done already. Now it's really high because I just don't want any chance of people jumping on top of it. So I'm going to copy this one, and I think I'm going to have just to zoom out and move it over there and a little bit further. And down there it is. I'll take it down while I position it. So it doesn't have to be precise. There are block walls in the vegetation itself, but that says to me you can't exploit that. You can shoot through it if you want. It's hard to see through it, but that is a wall that is not going to be exploited. So I need to do more of that everywhere. I'm trying to get thematically diverse stuff. I've reused these a little bit. I want things that are natural but do a good bit of blocking in this map. Macedonia, I was looking for very long sight lines and snipey stuff. That's what that map's all about. This one I don't want it to be dominated by snipers. It may still be, but I'm trying to really, these crypts I've placed first because I'm trying to really, in this case, break up the sight line here. I don't want that to be dominated from the crematorium. And if people are going to assault the crematorium, they need to have a good place to sort of stage. And this map has primarily been made for the DTAS game mode, Dynamic, Take and Secure, which is still being developed by me, in fact. It's based on an old one. It's working, it's not released yet. But the idea is that you can spawn anywhere, both sides. So everywhere on the map needs to have a bit of space and also has to be an interesting approach from anywhere to anywhere. So you want to have stuff everywhere while not making it appear too desperate. So I'm trying to create diverse areas like this one. This is a particular challenge. You should be able to sneak up if you're crouching through these gravestones. Just a whole lot of stuff, and trying to make sure there's enough cover for anywhere on the map from anywhere else. I've rambled a bit. There's lots more I could say and do. This is a creation of mine, but inspired by Beckenham Cemetery. These vault sets in particular. Don't complain if I've stolen anything. I have used real stuff, so sorry. I hope you want to be remembered. I have changed names where I can. So on these more obvious gravestones, these have been changed. I've photoshopped stuff so they're not the real people anymore. Eels, the foliage, mostly speed trees. These bushes are way overused. I will replace them, I think, with some other things in part. And there's one other thing, which is I've done some flybys. So demo videos of the map use flybys, where I just press the key and off it goes. I'm going to stop it, and if I go back to the game view, what it is, it's an actor with splines. So I just draw out the splines and it follows the splines. You can define how much it slows down at the beginning and end. There are different ways to operate it, but it only kind of works in the constant move speed. You can set the speeds. The rotation freedom tells you how fast it goes around corners. Initial proportion, you can make it start halfway through, for example. No roll movement is good. You don't normally get that in video anyway. But what this one does is, at this point along the path, it triggers this. The bomber trigger is a misnomer, but that makes the trains go. So let me just take that to 0.8. So if we just play that again, C to start this off. So that will now trigger the train, and here it comes. The sound needs a bit of work, as do the graphics. And it unceremoniously dumped me out at the end. Sorry, it's quite loud. It does need work, but you saw the signals went from green to red. The signals are linked, so it works just how it should. These actors define where you might want to sound your horn, where you might want to make that clack clack sound. So I've done another video on that before. I'm not going to go into that, but this whole train system I've done for this map, and there's a little bit of background stuff going on, a little bit of interest, a little bit of activity, and yeah. So there's a lot I was going to say, and I've forgotten all of it. But this is my cemetery map. I hope you had a little look at it. I might do another video if I remember what I was going to talk about. There you go. But anyway, hopefully you'll enjoy this in action soon, and yeah, bye bye.